Dream Team? It's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with the toll of Australia's flood catastrophe, Four Corners Part 3. Before we dive in, y'all know I need y'all to smash that subscribe button, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. You guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. What we got? Wow, that is devastating. My God. That's insane.
We call ourselves the River City, and most of the time it's really good, but then we flood and people forget.
Dr. Margaret Cook is a flood historian. She's been documenting the impact of floods here in Brisbane and beyond for years. An inquiry into the 2011 floods made 177 recommendations, but Dr. Cook believes they didn't go far enough.
We looked a little bit about how we build houses and what fabrics we use, but we didn't do the big issues that I'm talking about, which is actually marking areas where we don't continue to build.
In whose interest is it for development to continue unchecked in flood-prone areas?
Council get a lot of rates from houses being built. The state government gets land tax from land being subdivided. The real estate industry and the building industry is very, very powerful in Queensland. It's the developers, it's the real estate agents, it's that sort of industry. And lots of people are moving to Brisbane, they want new houses, and so there's that pressure as well. So it's a rapidly growing city with a lot of players who don't really want to stop the system that we're living in.
Of course. Wow. And I can understand, of course they don't want to stop the system because it's profiting, but look at this, man. Like, there's just certain places that development should not be built. And I can, like I said, what she said, I can understand from the other side of that, seeing that there's so many people that move into certain areas that want houses, or know what I'm saying? And so it's like, but this isn't worth it. I'd rather not buy the house if this was gonna happen. And I'm sure a lot of people, if they knew this was gonna happen, they'd rather not buy the house. Because this is insane.
In February this year, Brisbane flooded again.
Wow, my God.
Across southeast Queensland, 13 people died. Thousands of homes were damaged.
My Lord.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, mate, how are you?
James Davidson.
Paul Harding, how are we doing?
Man, you guys got smashed.
Yes, we did.
It's amazing you're here, like, unbelievable.
So that was our bathroom.
Yep.
This is what's left.
In the wake of the floods, the state government wants homes to be more resilient to floodwater. It's hired architect James Davidson to help residents.
How do you do that?
We need to retreat from certain areas. We need to think about changing building types in other areas that suit population pressures and flooding. We need to reform building codes for more appropriate building material usage. And then we have to deal with the legacy of the people that still get flooded every now and then. And with overland flow flooding.
Floodwaters engulfed Paul Harding's home, and now he wants out. He hopes the Queensland government will buy his home.
So Paul, you're a living, breathing example of the problem that we're facing in Australia, which is that really there are areas where people shouldn't be living. Is that fair?
100%. They're called floodplains. Houses should not be built on them. Like, it's pretty common sense, really.
Facts.
But somewhere along the line, someone got greedy and decided that that's a good place to build houses. And then stupidly, people like myself bought them. But we never expected it to have this much impact.
It's never too late.
Yeah.
We can always learn from history. If we learn nothing, we are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. That's what we learn. And so we do know where it floods. We do know how to prevent them through design and zoning and moving people. We've just got to have the courage to actually do it.
That's it, bro. Because, yeah, you can't keep going on like that, bro. Like, people can't keep going on like that. in fear, waiting for the next flood to happen, because you know another one's coming. Like it's inevitable. At some point, another one's gonna come, and it's gonna ruin everything again. So either like stop building houses there. I don't know, understand how you figure out how to build houses to where I guess they're more resilient to these floods. I mean, the floods are almost engulfing like the entire house. I would say you just I don't know. I don't know the answer. So I am here giving my opinion and everything, but I don't know the answers to fix it. Only thing I can come up with is stop building houses there. But then, like she said earlier, I don't know the answers to when people are moving in and they want to buy houses and there's no more land to develop houses. Now what do? I have no idea the answers to that.
In Western Sydney, a new generation of homebuyers are moving onto the floodplain.
Wow.
6 weeks ago, Jigga Gosai got the keys to his home in a brand new development.
Yeah, it's a new suburb, and that young families are moving over here, and our friends and families are here. So that's the main reason we moved here.
He says it cost him around $1.2 million.
Jigga, when you were looking at the land to buy, and you were going through all those conversations with the real estate agent and the developer, did they talk about flood risk?
They never mention about the flood risk.
Wow.
I think there should be some points in their contract, but it's like 150-page contract. But I don't think they have highlighted anything specifically for the flood.
It never came up. No one ever mentioned that this was a floodplain or that there might be evacuation problems?
No, I'm not across any of those sort of information.
Wow. Not even a warning.
As the floodwater approached,
That's
the SES
crazy.
issued an evacuation warning for Jigga's street.
We are advising people to prepare to evacuate. It says floodwaters may isolate this area. If you remain in the area, you may be trapped without power, water and other essential services, and it may be too dangerous to rescue you. How does that make you feel?
I think that's a scary part, or I was anxious. So still, like since last 2 days, like it's difficult to sleep because I don't know what will happen, and especially the bad thing, it's life threatening, as well as I have invested a lot more money, like my whole life's money in this house. So
Wow.
it's a scary.
The Planning Institute of Australia.
That's
Tom Forrest
devastating.
lobbies on behalf of property developers.
I would say buyer beware. I would say that if you're buying a $1.2 million house in Western Sydney, you need to read that 200 pages of documentation as to all of the issues associated with your home.
I understand that perspective, but I mean, there should be people like the contract or the sales agent, real estate agent, everybody selling a home, and they should be warning the people that there's flood risk. Like, it shouldn't just be in a 150, 200 page contract that, I mean, I'm sure nobody reads 200. There's some people, don't get me, there's some people who read 200 pages of contract, but I feel like a lot of people aren't gonna go through 200 pages of contract. They're gonna go off based off what the real estate agent, you know what I'm saying, or whoever's selling the house is talking to them about. And so you should have to tell them about the flood risk warning. And then that if they decide to buy it after you tell them all about the flood risk warning and floods that have happened in the past and everything, then I feel like buyer beware.
Back in 2017, Infrastructure New South Wales warned that the road networks here were insufficient to evacuate the people who lived in the Hawkesbury Nepean, but construction continued.
Wow.
Former New South Wales SES Deputy Director General Chaz Keys has been warning about the risk for years.
The problem in Hawkesbury is the difficulty of escape and the fact that people don't want to evacuate, so they'll delay. which means that a rising river will cut evacuation routes and people will be trapped. If it continues to rise beyond that, you get into a situation where islands that people are on, they become islands, will shrink to nothing. People will be washed away.
Wow.
Tom Forrest thinks the risk is overstated.
Not heard of roads being chocked with people who are stranded in flood-prone waters as yet.
The New South Wales government has paused residential rezoning on the floodplain, but there are still thousands of homes that have already been approved to be built. The head of the Insurance Council, Andrew Hall, says building there is a bad idea.
Obviously.
It's already going to be a very expensive job protecting Western Sydney and the communities that live and work there from the risks that exist for flooding. We can't exacerbate that problem by allowing any further development in areas that are at any risk of flooding.
In flood-prone areas, insurance is getting more expensive and harder to find.
I bet.
A sustainable insurance industry will only work when the premiums of the many pay the claims of the few. And in this instance, when we have a situation where you've got whole communities that are at risk, the insurance sector starts to become untenable.
Yeah, I mean, and it's understandable from an insurance standpoint. Like, you know it's gonna happen. Insurance companies don't want to pay people. We all know that. We're all not dumb. Insurance companies, they don't want to pay, and so when they know there's a high risk in that area, they're not gonna want to offer you insurance because you know it floods. You don't know when it's coming, but you know at some point you're going to have to pay these people who have flood insurance because that flood's gonna damage all of their property. And so definitely sure insurance companies definitely don't want to offer them insurance to people who live in these areas.
New homes must be built above the so-called 1 in 100 year level. That means there's a 1% chance of a flood reaching that height in any given year.
I think the way we describe these benchmarks, 1 in 100 year, 1 in 500 year, is so confusing. Even though it doesn't mean that, people think it means this flood's going to come along once in 100 years. Whereas, as we've seen, you can have 2 1 in 100 year floods a few months apart. So I think that the terminology does not help people to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Last year, the then New South Wales Planning Minister Rob Stokes upset developers when he announced guidelines to address the increasing risk of floods caused by climate change.
It's to ensure that we take a very precautionary approach when we look at future development, because we know that the nature of the risks we're facing are changing and amplifying, and that's a direct cause of climate change.
Developers said the change created unnecessary red tape.
It was a little bit of, if you like, I would call it self-indulgent window dressing from the minister as he was literally leaving the portfolio. Let's put down 9 new planning principles, and the 9 new planning principles will guide the system. That case was put to the incoming Minister for Planning. He agreed that this was unnecessary duplication involving unnecessary delay and cost. At a time where we have a housing supply crisis, we don't need delay and extra time taken.
A very good afternoon, and can I also...
Yeah, that's just a tough situation to be in, where you got a housing supply crisis, but then you also have a flood crisis in certain communities. But it's like you need more houses, but houses shouldn't be put on this area. So I don't know.
The traditional owners upon whose lands we meet today and pay respects to elders past and present.
A ministerial reshuffle saw a new planning minister, Anthony Roberts, who dumped the guidelines. In April, he gave a speech to developers.
There were too many principles and considerations which made your job of delivering homes for people harder. You can say, I've heard you and the government's heard you.
Why has your government dumped your guidelines that would have had us better prepared for floods in the future?
Well, whatever approach is taken, and different ministers may have different approaches, the challenge we face is not going away. The challenge we face remains before us. There may be different approaches taken. The challenge is that the problem is there before us, and whatever solutions taken, the problem's not going to go away.
At a moment like this, where we can look around us in New South Wales and see the absolutely devastating impacts of climate change and the dreadful things that it is doing to people's lives, it seems crazy to me that we would not be taking this into account in every decision that we make about planning and development. We can't continue with a business as usual approach in this space any longer. Everything has to change right now.
For now, the New South Wales Premier isn't committing to moving people off the floodplains.
It would be completely remiss of any good government to be sitting there and saying, well, we're just going to keep doing things the same way. Now, that doesn't mean you close towns. No, I have a strong view, particularly in the northern rivers and around the Hawke's region, that we want those towns to flourish. But that doesn't mean we can't do things better in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the most important thing up front is to not immediately start making decisions about where we shouldn't build in the middle of a flood crisis. It's really important that we step aside from the obvious emotions of the difficulties people are facing and not make knee-jerk responses that may sometimes be inflamed with passion.
We're not learning from the floods of the past.
No, we never do. It's amazing. We're a dumb species, really. I mean, this happens over and over again. It's repeated. We get to understand it to a considerable extent. We study it. We do a few things around the edges, and then we wait for the next one, and the next one's a Lismore.
The definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
The exhausted Gillivers, embarking on yet another epic cleanup, know that before long they'll go through this all over again.
Wow.
Tired. Tired. Over it. It's just time and money, and I feel like I'm running out of both, to be honest. We've got other things we want to achieve, but you've got to spend months cleaning up flood waste and cleaning, and then do it again, and then do it again. Like, what do you do? And we're not in a position to move, so yet anyway. So we're stuck here. Anyway.
I can imagine that would definitely be exhausting. Yeah, that's just a very difficult situation. Of what do you do? I'm intrigued to hear in the comment section. What do you guys think the right answer in this situation that's facing a housing supply crisis, but also a flood crisis? That's all we got. You guys got a favorite video suggestion? You can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, give the video a thumbs up so they suggest it. It's your boy Neal, out.